Hey guys, welcome back to ReactJS Spring Boot CRUD full stack application tutorial series. In this video, let us take a look at Spring Boot React full stack application architecture. We have React application architecture at the client side, and at the server side we have Spring Boot application architecture. Let's quickly take a look at Spring Boot application architecture first. We have a Spring REST controller and Spring Data JPA component. Spring REST controller will basically handle HTTP calls, for example get, post, put and delete, and we use Spring MVC to develop Spring REST controller, and we use Spring Data JPA to develop a repository or a DAO layer. Basically we use Spring Data JPA to reduce a lot of boilerplate code that is required to develop a DAO layer. Okay, and at the database layer we are going to use MySQL database. Now let's take a look at a React application architecture. We have different components involved in a React application architecture, for example router, components and service. So we configure router along with its component and we inject service in a component. So we write all the HTTP REST client code inside a service, and we inject service in a components, and we call service methods from the component. And here at the middle we have Axios HTTP library. So we are basically use Axios HTTP library to make a REST API call. React is not concerned with HTTP, so we have to use third-party HTTP library to make a REST API call in a React application. In our case, we are going to use Axios HTTP library to make a REST API call from the React application. So this is a high-level Spring Boot React full stack application architecture. Alright, great. Now let's quickly have a look into what are the tools and technologies that we'll be using at the front end side. We use a React JavaScript library to develop a single page application, and we are going to use modern JavaScript, and we are going to use Node.js and npm to install and create the project and libraries, and we are going to use Visual Studio Code IDE to develop a React application, and we are going to use Create React App command line tool to quickly create and run a React application, and we are going to use Bootstrap CSS library to style our web pages, and we are going to use Axios HTTP library to make a REST API call. Alright guys, now let's quickly take a look at what are the tools and technologies that we are going to use at a server side. We are going to use Spring Boot 2+, and we are going to use Spring Data JPA. It internally uses Hibernate ORM framework to develop a DAO layer, and we are going to use Maven 3.2+ as a build and project management tool, and we are going to use JDK 1.8, and we are going to use Embedded Tomcat server, that is 8.5+, and we are going to use MySQL database. And to develop Spring Boot application we are going to use Eclipse STS IDE. Let us take a prerequisites for this tutorial series. You should have basic knowledge of HTML and CSS. You should have understanding of JavaScript and programming, and you should make sure that you have installed Node.js and npm on your machine, and you should have some basic understanding of React. I am not going to cover the basics of React, though I am going to explain you the basics while project development, but please spend a few minutes to understand the React basics like components, states, props, alright, and routing, etc. So we'll focus on developing a project, not the basic concepts, though I am going to explain the basics while developing the project. Alright guys, let us take a look at project development process. So we are going to develop a CRUD full stack application. So we first complete list employee functionality, and then create employee functionality. After that update employee functionality, and then delete employee functionality. So we'll divide this functionality into steps. First we'll complete end-to-end list employee functionality. First we'll begin with creating a Spring Boot project, and then we add JPA entity and repository to Spring Boot project, and then we create list employee REST API. So once we create and expose list employee REST API, and then we head over to the React application. So we will start creating React application, and then we add Bootstrap to the React application, and we create a React list employee component to consume list employee REST API. And next we make a REST API call, that is list employee REST API call in a React app, and we populate the response of this REST API in a web page. And then we create a React header and footer components, and then we configure routing. Alright guys, we complete list employee functionality end to end, and then we move to the create employee functionality. We first create add employee REST API, and then we head over to the React application, and then we create a React add employee component, and we create a add employee form in a React application, and we make a REST API call, that is add employee REST API call, and we store the employee form data into a database using REST API. Once we complete end-to-end create employee functionality, and then we move to update employee functionality. Similarly, we first create a get employee REST API, update employee REST API, and then we create a React update employee component. Once a user update employee details, and then we make a REST API call, that is update employee REST API call, to store the updated employee data into a database. Once we complete update employee functionality end to end, then we move to the delete employee functionality. Then again we create a delete employee REST API, and then we consume this REST API in a React application. Finally, we will have a end-to-end demo. So in this way we are going to complete each functionality end to end. Let's go ahead and let's first implement list employee functionality, and we'll begin with creating Spring Boot project in the next video. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.